Once upon a time, in a sun-dappled glade nestled within an ancient forest, there lived a spirited tabby kitten named Little Red Whiskers. Her fur was a soft patchwork of orange and brown, streaked with stripes that danced when she moved. But it was the vivid red ribbon around her neck that earned her the name. Her mother, a wiry tortoiseshell named Clover, had tied it there moons ago, a keepsake from a long-lost littermate. Little Red Whiskers was the smallest of her kin, but her emerald eyes sparkled with a boldness that charmed every cat in their clowder, a tight-knit colony of felines who shared the glade's bounty of mice and shade. The forest was a wild tapestry of towering pines and gnarled oaks, its floor carpeted with moss and dotted with burbling streams. Birds trilled from the canopy, their songs a constant tease to the cats below, while the wind carried whispers of distant dangers, foxes, hawks, and the dreaded wolves that prowled beyond the clouder's borders. The felines had carved out a safe haven in the glade, their dens woven from brambles and lined with feathers, but the deeper woods were a realm of shadows no kitten was meant to explore. One crisp morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the leaves, Clover summoned Little Red Whiskers to her side. The tortoiseshell's amber eyes were sharp with concern, her tail flicking restlessly. "My sweet kit," she meowed, her voice a low rumble. "Your grandmamma, old Pippin, has taken ill. She's been hacking up hairpaws all week, and her paws tremble too much to hunt. I've packed a basket fresh sardines from the riverbank, a sprig of dry catnip, and a mouse I caught at dawn. Take it to her den in the hollow oak beyond the stream. But hear me well, stick to the path. The forest is no place for a wandering whisker, especially with wolves about." Little Red Whiskers' ears perked up, and she gave a chirpy trill of agreement. Clover nudged the basket toward her, a sturdy weave of reeds, its lid tied shut with vine, and the kitten gripped it in her sharp little teeth. With a farewell flick of her tail, she bounded out of the glade, the red ribbon fluttering like a flame against the green. The path was a narrow ribbon of packed earth, worn smooth by countless paws, winding past fern thickets and over mossy stones. It smelled of home, of Clover's scent, and the clowder cat patrols, and Little Red Whiskers felt bold as she trotted along, the basket swinging lightly. But the forest was alive with distractions. A squirrel chattered from a low branch, its bushy tail a taunt she couldn't ignore. She set the basket down and crouched, her haunches wiggling, though she resisted the chase. Then came the butterfly's delicate wings of gold and blue, flitting through a patch of wildflowers, just off the trail. Their dance was too much for her kitten heart. "Just a quick pounce," she purred to herself, abandoning the basket to leap into the blooms. Petals scattered around her as she batted at the air, her ribbon catching the light with every twist. From the shadows of a thorn bush, a pair of glowing amber eyes tracked her every move. It was the big bad wolf, a towering beast whose name sent shivers down the spines of every creature in the forest. His shaggy coat was a mottled grey, streaked with dirt and pine needles, and his jaws bore teeth like daggers, stained from years of hunting. He was no stranger to the clouder's edges, often snatching stray kits or scattering their prey with his howls. The scent of sardines hit his snout like a thunderclap, and his tongue lolled out, dripping with hunger. Padding forward on massive paws, he loomed over the basket, his shadow swallowing the path. "Well, well," he growled, his voice a deep, rumbling snarl as he stepped into Little Red Whiskers' view. She froze mid-pounce, her tail puffing up at the sight of him. "What's a tiny morsel like you doing so far from your den, with such a fine prize?" Little Red Whiskers straightened, her ears flattening, but her curiosity battled her fear. He wasn't a cat, his scent was all wrong, wet and musky, but she'd never met a wolf before. "I'm Little Red Whiskers," she mewed, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm taking this basket to my grandmamma, Pippin. She lives in the hollow oak by the stream. She's sick, and these are for her." The big bad wolf's ears twitched, a glint of cunning in his amber gaze. "How kind," he rumbled, his tail swishing slowly like a pendulum. "But those flowers you're chasing, they're nothing compared to the catmint patch over the ridge. Lush and wild, the best in the woods. Your grandmamma would love a sprig of that, wouldn't she? It's just a hop that way." He jerked his snout toward the ridge, his tone slick with false warmth. Little Red Whiskers hesitated, her ribbon swaying as she tilted her head. She'd heard of catmint's wonders, how it turned even the stiffest elders into kittens again. "Oh, that would cheer her up," she chirped, her fear giving way to excitement. "Thank you, sir." With a flick of her tail, she darted off toward the ridge, her paws kicking up dirt, leaving the basket unguarded. The wolf's grin bared every tooth. He snatched the basket in his jaws, its weight nothing to his strength, and loped down the path, his claws gouging the earth. The hollow oak rose before him soon enough, a gnarled giant, its trunk split into a cozy den lined with moss and twigs. Inside, old Pippin lay curled in a nest of feathers, her calico fur dulled by age, her breath a faint wheeze. She'd once been a terror to the forest's vermin, a hunter who'd faced down a hawk and lived, but now her bones ached and her eyes were clouded. The big bad wolf didn't pause. He dropped the basket and lunged through the entrance, his massive frame barely squeezing inside. Pippin's ears flicked up too late, a snarl filled the den as his jaws closed around her, swallowing her whole in one ravenous gulp. Her tough old hide caught in his throat, forcing a rough gag, but he shook it off. Rummaging through her nest, he found a tattered shawl of woven wool, a relic from her youth. He draped it over his broad shoulders, pulling the hood low to mask his snout, and crouched in the moss pile, his bushy tail tucked awkwardly beneath him. The basket he nosed beside him, its contents a treat he'd claim after his next meal. Meanwhile, Little Red Whiskers had reached the ridge, only to find a snarl of brambles and a mocking squirrel, no catmint in sight. "Mouse done," she muttered, her ears drooping. The sun was higher now, and guilt pricked her paws. She turned back, retracing her steps until she reached the hollow oak. The basket was gone from the path, but she didn't notice. Her thoughts on Grandmamma. She tapped the bark with a paw. "Grandmamma Pippin, it's me, Little Red Whiskers," she called, her voice a bright mew. "Come in, my darling," came a gravelly growl, muffled by the shawl. Little Red Whiskers slipped inside, her nose wrinkling at the stench sardines tangled with a wet, canine reek. The den was dim, lit only by slivers of light through the oak's cracks, and the figure in the moss pile was wrong. Too big, too shaggy. She tilted her head, her ribbon swaying, and took a cautious step forward. "Oh, Grandmamma," she mewed. "What big ears you have." The big bad wolf shifted, the shawl slipping slightly as he tucked his ears back. "All the better to hear your sweet purrs, my dear," he rumbled, forcing his voice into a strained imitation of Pippin's softer tone. "And what big eyes you have," she said, her own eyes narrowing as she crept closer, her claws flexing instinctively. "All the better to admire your pretty ribbon," he replied, his amber gaze burning through the gloom. "And what big teeth you have," Little Red Whiskers squeaked, her tail puffing to twice its size as the shawl fell, revealing a snout full of jagged fangs. "All the better to eat you with," the wolf bellowed, hurling the shawl aside and leaping from the nest, his jaws snapping at her. Little Red Whiskers yowled and dodged, her tiny body slipping beneath his lunge. She scrambled up the oak's inner walls, her claws sinking into the bark as she climbed out of reach. The wolf roared, rearing up to claw at her, his bulk splintering the dense twigs. His teeth grazed her tail, but she yanked it free, clinging to a high perch, her heart thudding like a trapped bird. A deep hiss cut through the din. Stripe, a burly tomcat from the clowder, burst into the den, his striped pelt bristling. He was a hunter of renown, his amber eyes blazing as he sized up the wolf bigger than any foe he'd faced, but no match for his fury. Stripe had been stalking a vole near the stream when Little Red Whiskers' cry pierced the air, and now his claws gleamed like crescent moons. "Back off, cur," he snarled, launching himself at the beast. The den became a whirlwind, fur flew, claws raked, and roars clashed with hisses. The wolf snapped at Stripe's flank, but the tom was a blur, darting beneath his jaws to slash at his legs. Little Red Whiskers watched wide-eyed as Stripe landed a vicious rake across the wolf's snout. With a yelp, the big bad wolf stumbled back, blood matting his fur, and bolted from the den, his howls fading into the forest. Stripe panted, his tail lashing as he looked up at Little Red Whiskers. "You hurt, Kit," he growled, his voice softening. She shook her head, sliding down the bark to land beside him. "Grandmamma, he ate her," she wailed, her ribbon drooping. Stripe sniffed the air, then nosed the moss pile where the shawl lay crumpled. A faint cough sputtered out, followed by a wet hack. The wolf's haste had saved Pippin. Her wiry frame emerged from a coughed-up tangle, slick with slobber but alive. "Filthy mutt," she rasped, shaking herself off, her calico fur spiking in clumps. Little Red Whiskers purred loud enough to rustle the leaves, nuzzling her grandmamma as Stripe dragged the basket from the corner. The three settled in the den, sharing the sardines and catnip as Pippin recounted her brief, unpleasant journey down the wolf's gullet. Clover arrived soon after, summoned by Stripe's patrol, and though she scolded Little Red Whiskers for straying, her purrs betrayed her relief. From that day, Little Red Whiskers stuck to the path mostly. Clover always sent Stripe or another hunter along, just in case. The big bad wolf slunk through the forest still, his snout scarred and his pride battered, but he never dared near the clowder cat again. The squirrels, though, took great delight in pelting him with pine cones from the treetops, a chorus of chitters to haunt his every step.